Hi, I'm Sal DiVincenzo of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode in our History Bites series. In part 2 of this two-part series, we will discuss the history of the Walt Disney Company, which celebrated their 100th anniversary in October of 2023, focusing on Disney's entry into the 21st century and a possible seismic shift for the company that could see it face another hostile takeover attempt. If you want to watch part 1, click on the link in the comments below. Robert Iger was the former president of ABC TV and then president and chief operating officer of Capital Cities ABC until its acquisition by Disney in 1996. Iger was named president of Disney in 2000 and eventually replaced Michael Eisner in 2005 as CEO. Disney animated classics such as The Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and Lilo and Stitch all came at the beginning of the decade. Not quite the blockbusters of Disney's so-called Renaissance period, but nonetheless all embraced by the fandom. Also included in this time frame were Monsters Incorporated, Brother Bear, and Treasure Planet. Disney began a somewhat hit-and-miss pattern with some of their original animated films. Their live-action offerings, on the other hand, got a huge boost from their theme park ride adaptation of Pirates of the Caribbean. Along with Disney Pixar's Finding Nemo, the studio became the first in history to surpass $3 billion in the global box office. Riding on that success, Bob Iger put plans in motion that would drastically change the company and see over a decade of expansion of their intellectual properties, including the return of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It all began in 2006. In January, the Walt Disney Company acquired Pixar for $7.4 billion. While Disney had a long-standing relationship with Pixar in terms of distribution and marketing, the animation juggernaut was now formally owned by Disney. Shortly after, Disney dipped its toe in the streaming market by joining a joint venture with NBC Universal and News Corporation to create Hulu. And just 2 years later, the company took another huge step by acquiring Marvel Studios for $4.4 billion. The Marvel Universe was now Disney's to build and ended up undoubtedly being one of the world's most successful film series of all time. Not long after the Marvel acquisition, Disney made another huge addition to their portfolio when in October 2012, Bob Iger announced that Lucasfilm was being acquired by Disney for a little over $4 billion. This acquisition, we will later find out, would become somewhat controversial in hindsight and be the start of a rough period for the studio and the fandom. In 2019, Disney made their final big acquisition by winning a bidding war with NBC Universal for 20th Century Fox for a whopping $71.3 billion. During this time, Disney continued to release a number of fantastic movies such as The Princess and the Frog, Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, the wildly popular Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Encanto. Disney appeared to be on top of the world, a company whose name was synonymous with blockbuster family programming, world-class theme parks, and now intellectual properties that appealed to every generation. What could possibly go wrong? First, let's address the Jabba the Hutt-sized elephant in the room. The new Star Wars films released by Lucasfilm between 2015 and 2019 divided the fans. Many felt that their beloved characters were being left by the wayside. The storylines were convoluted, and the general direction of the story was not quite in the spirit of George Lucas and his original films. In fact, the new films and TV shows got their own new label, Disney Star Wars. The new series of films began what many see as criticism of Kathleen Kennedy, now president of Lucasfilm, and a Bob Iger ally. It even bled over into the Indiana Jones sequel, which today is seen as one of the studio's biggest box office failures. But that was just a hiccup compared to what the world was dealt in late 2019. When the pandemic began making headlines, it coincided with Bob Iger stepping down just as the world was shutting down. He appointed his successor, Bob Chapek, in what seemed to many analysts as a hasty and quickly created press release, along with some appearances on business TV. Shortly after, everything shut down. The parks were closed and the movie theaters shuttered. Two of Disney's biggest revenue streams were now no longer moving, but Disney had a little bit of a lifeline up their sleeve: Disney Plus. It came at just the right time, months before the shutdown, but initially it seemed Disney Plus was not only a huge success for the company, but a means of making revenue while the parks were closed. As millions of users signed up, it looked like Disney would be able to weather the storm. When the parks finally reopened, however, things took a sudden and dramatic turn for the company. The parks had been Disney's proverbial crutch to lean on for many years. If the box office was down or their TV business was not doing so well, the theme parks picked up the slack by leaps and bounds. But as many services that existed before the pandemic were discontinued, the parks began to see a precipitous drop-off in new bookings. The parks appeared to be busy, but in the conference rooms at corporate, a storm was brewing on the horizon. Prices were increased. New rules were put in place, including must-have park reservations. A trip to the Walt Disney World Resort or Disneyland Resort for the average family became very, very expensive. Many people saw Bob Chapek's leadership as too businesslike, not warm enough, not magical enough, and too much nickel and diming of the guests. It would soon get much worse for Chapek as the company entered the dangerous world of politics. While we will stay away from the details here, the Disney company put themselves into a highly publicized political battle with the governor of Florida that turned into what many describe as a culture war. Many people agree on both sides of the debate that Bob Chapek and the Disney company handled the situation poorly. The company saw its reputation score take a hit for the first time in its history. 2022 saw the company's stock plunge. Pundits and fans alike became involved. Disney's box office started to take a hit, as did their theme parks. Investors started to take note. Disney was no longer the company it was, and change needed to take place. In November of 22, Bob Chapek was unceremoniously let go from the Walt Disney Company, and Robert Iger surprisingly returned as CEO just 2 years after his departure. There was initial relief that came over both fans and investors alike, but it was short-lived. Disney Plus's growth wasn't meeting expectations. Fans became vocal and critical of the studio's new TV and movie offerings. Fans of the Disney parks began adjusting their visiting habits, and as Disney's 100th anniversary has come and gone, the studio and the company as a whole is struggling. The last 4 films released by the company are considered box office flops, including the most recent release, Wish, which is on track to lose almost $500 million for the company. Also on the horizon is Disney's complete takeover of Hulu, which will put the company out of over $20 billion. Between the company's entry into the so-called culture war, the dwindling box office returns, a drop in visitors at the park, and the general reputation of an almost universally once respected company now dropping, the inevitable has happened. Activist investors are now making their case against Disney. At the time of recording, Nelson Peltz of Trian Partners, a firm that owns over $3 billion in value of Disney stocks, has initiated a hostile takeover attempt of the company. Along with the former CFO of Disney, Jay Rizzullo, the investors are pushing for seats on the board and asking for a change in leadership at the company. So what will the future hold for the Walt Disney Company? Only time will tell. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched it on YouTube, hit subscribe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all real soon.